have to understand or look at it from the point of view of understanding a feedback system. Because if it's a feedback system, that's to control the output, that's to adapt to the information that's being given to you. So depending on how people may react to you, or depending on your environment, those things are all, it's just feedback coming back to you, telling you what needs to be adjusted. So a lot of times we take what's seen as negative feedback, we react to it in a negative way, and we don't allow ourselves to be able to take that and adapt in our output and be able to change our environment and be able to change what's going on around us, because we're not listening to the feedback. We're not adapting to the feedback. We're not allowing ourselves to understand our own energy and what we are projecting out. So a means of being able to interpret that can be your birth chart, can be your numerology chart. These are just a means of understanding how you are received, because it's hard for us to get out of our minds and understand how somebody else's mind operates. Because the mind controls the reality. It's all about the data perceived and information that's received. So I don't know how the next person is perceiving their reality. So in that sense, it's effective if there are things that I am trying to change, that I am altering, if I can receive the information that's given. That don't always mean that everybody's perception of us is correct, because you don't have to go off of one person's perception and take that as a thing. But if you get the repeated results, if people keep saying the same thing over and over, it may be time that you listen, because you're not listening to that feedback. Because this is going to help you in how you are able to relate with others. Therefore, your relationships, these are why your relationships are not working. You are not receptive of your feedback. So, and especially when there's people that's close to us, and that's because we haven't dealt with our shadow. It's because we haven't dealt with our own egos either. So we really just in chaotic states of being. That's the real point of the knowledge of self. It's to bring you back centerfold to your center and who you are. So But that's all of the unlearning that we have to do because of everything that's instilled and that's been put in on us. So now these feedback systems that we do have in place, they are based on certain ideas that's been given to us, that's been fed to us. But we're going to talk about that too. But anyway, okay. Now, let's talk about projections. Now, when it comes to projections, projections is an unconscious mechanism that is employed whenever a trait or characteristic of our personality that has no relationship to the consciousness becomes activated. As a result of the unconscious projection, we observe and react to this unrecognized personal trait in others. Let me move myself out of the way. In other people. We see in them something that is a part of ourselves, but which we fail to see in ourselves. Now, we can make both negative and positive projections. All projections aren't negative. Sometimes there are positive projections. This is, when we see those things in people that we admire. All projections and all shadow traits don't always express in a negative way in the real world. Sometimes those things can end up working as a positive, but it can still not be within our center. So we have to just balance ourselves out. Okay, now, most of the time, right, it is the undesirable dimensions of ourselves that we see in others. Therefore, to encounter the elements of the shadow, we need to examine what traits, qualities, characteristics, and attitudes we dislike in other people and how strongly we dislike them. The simplest method is to just list all the qualities that we do not like in other people. For instance, conceit, having a short temper, being selfish, having bad manners, being greedy, being jealous, whatever the case may be. When the list is complete, and it's probably going to be pretty long, right? Take out of those the ones that we not only dislike in others, but we despise, we absolutely hate, we can't tolerate. This shorter list is a more accurate depiction of your personal shadow, of your own shadow traits. So it's going to be hard to believe and accept it, but it's like an absolute all aspect of means of looking at yourself. I can get how acting, right, can be so spiritually rewarding, because it can allow people the framework or the time and the luxury of being paid to be in different roles, to act out different ways of being, because it gives you the freedom of carrying out some of this energy in a character. See, that's what they mean sometimes when they say that people get lost in characters. They can find themselves in a dark place dealing with a character, because their shadow, it may be a part of their shadow that latch onto that expression. But I truly, somebody who understands energy, I can see how spiritually that can be so liberating. But if people don't have an understanding of how that can work, they can be overwhelming. And that can be a lot for people. And that's why a lot of people get swallowed up in it. This is just me just saying, just looking at it as an observer, as somebody who really works with and understand energy. But that's something that, because, hey, think about it. If there's a violent, part of you that you're never going to use, well, you can act that out. But see, that's the power of being a writer. You can write a story. You can put all of that in a character. You can create a world for that character. You can, even in being an artist, you can express that. You can paint that out. Even in being a musician, you can write that in storytelling, in a song, or in poetry, in spoken word. All of these things are means of expressing that energy. So a lot of people get that shadow out through art. See, that's why I say a lot of us do shadow work, but we don't know it. It's just we run into some blocks and, some walls sometimes, and we lack the direction that we should go. But a lot of times we're always doing shadow work. We just don't realize that's just as simple of a nature as what it is, because we can overthink what these things are, because it can be so much of an abstract of an idea. But it depends on the individual, and that's what, the more you study the occult, the more you realize, the more it's about your independent thought or interpretation of a lot of these things, because that's what makes the magic is really in you. It's really in what you bring to it, what you add to it, what you feel spiritually inclined to do. Those things are unmatched. Those are the most powerful things that you could ever do spiritually, in terms of empowering yourself spiritually, because only you know you like you. So you already know. You just have to make that connection within yourself and build up, that confidence, and following what you feel and knowing what you feel. It's the difference between knowing the path and walking the path. That's what Morpheus meant when he said that. It's a difference between knowing the path and walking the path, because you just have to be it, but we can theorize it, and we can talk about it and socialize about it all day and have ideas about what it is. but you have to do it. You have to put it into your being, you know. Now, like I said, all of our criticisms of others, aren't projections of our own undesirable traits, but anytime, a good way to tell is anytime our response to another person, because we're dealing with mirrors when we're dealing with people, right? Anytime our response to another person involves excessive emotion, like excessive emotion or overreaction, exaggerated response, it's like, dang, why you being so dramatic? That's something that's unconscious that has been provoked and has been activated. So now, when these things happen, you can be like, oh man, that's their shadow. See, they don't know what's happening. They not gonna understand you saying like, look, that's not the means of being. They're not gonna get that. But that's what you are now interacting with. You are interacting with that person's shadow. You are interacting with the dark side of them that has now come out. The unconscious part of them has been provoked. And it's typically, undesirable situations, but, nevertheless, there's the power of positive projection. We do well to recognize the presence of potential positive dimensions of our shadow as well as negative. So we have to list qualities too that we admire, and then we take from that list qualities that we deeply admire in other people. And then, because somewhere you be like, man, I could never be that, that good. That's also a projection of that. So investigate those traits as well, because that's your golden shadow. That's the golden shadow. That's the gifts of the shadow. If you can have the right relationship with your shadow, it's going to reward you. So those traits that you think that are so positive they are unreachable too exist within that shadow.